Today we're talking about how to write compelling dialogue, and I'm going to give you my 5-step process. Let me guess, you're here watching because you don't want your dialogue to sound like a 3rd grade play. Hello there, sir. To whom shall I address this letter? In this video, I'm going to give you 5 tips for writing dialogue that sounds like people actually talk, okay? And the most important tip is number 4. I'll go ahead and tell you that now. So let's go. Writing my first novel, when you read this, my agent gave me the feedback that she loved it, but everyone sounded like me. Whoops. So how did I write like other people talk? I wanted to be realistic, but I also needed to capture different character voices in my prose. First thing I want you to do is lose the ping pong talk. In real life, we don't actually talk like we're hitting a ping pong ball. It's not like I ask you a question, you answer it. You ask me a question and I answer it. It's more like person A says, want to go to the store? And person B says, where are my keys? Have you seen them? And person A says, I can't remember. Are we out of eggs? Do we need milk? And person B says, oh, there are my keys, right? Like we kind of talk past each other. We're not actually super good at listening to each other. So if you make your characters kind of messy listeners and messy speakers, it makes their dialogue more realistic. Tip number 2 is to lose the grammar rules, okay? Only certain kinds of people say whom. Yes, it's technically correct, but most people don't talk like that. And so if your characters don't, leave it out. If your novel isn't set in the 1800s, you probably don't need whom. And also, your sentences can end in a preposition. A lot of times writers come to work with me and they're lawyers or they're academics and they think, oh, I'm not supposed to end a sentence with a preposition, right? No, first of all, of course you can in creative writing. The same grammar rules don't really apply when you're writing fiction, but particularly when it comes to how your characters are speaking, we don't worry about ending a sentence with the word to or the word with when we're just talking in everyday life. I don't worry about saying like, who are you going to go to that party with, right? I just say that. So lose the grammar rules. Tip number 3 is to drop the dialogue tags for now while you're writing your first draft. So by dialogue tags, I mean he said, she said, he said, she said, they said, right? Like around the dialogue itself, you have dialogue tags telling the reader who is speaking. When you ultimately finish your draft, of course, you're going to have dialogue tags so that the reader knows who's talking. But in your first draft, a lot of times, if you're like me, you're hearing the conversation play out in your head, and it's a lot easier to just write literally what they're saying without the tags and add them later. So that's what I recommend doing if, like I said, you're like me and you're hearing the conversation in your head and you don't need tags right now. When you do add them later, by the way, using the word said is fine. You don't need to get creative with your verbs. A lot of times writers ask me like, I feel like I'm writing the word said so much. I feel like, maybe I should say chortled, yelled, whispered. I mean, of course, it's fine to use some sort of original verbs like that, but really, said is a solid choice all the time. The reader isn't going to be distracted by the fact that you're using it a lot. In fact, it's one of those filler words and their eyes are just going to kind of gloss over it and in a good way. You feel like you're using it a lot as the writer, but the reader isn't really going to notice. I think it was maybe Stephen King who pointed this out in some of his writing tips. Before I give you my favorite tip, thank you for watching. I just want to tell you that before I'd published any of my 3 novels with HarperCollins, I was a former lawyer trying to publish a novel that had taken me 6 years to write after dozens of false starts and scrapped drafts. But one day, something finally clicked, and 3 books later, now I'm a published author and a writing coach, here to share what I learned along my journey so you can streamline your path to writing your dream book, saving you years of the trial and error that I went through, hopefully. On this channel, you're gonna learn how to actually get your book written, how to cross that elusive finish line to becoming a professional writer, and how to do it joyfully. Writing doesn't have to be scary and painful. In fact, it can and should be fun most of the time. So let's make writing fun again and get your best book done together. So please like this video and subscribe to this channel because I have plenty more tips and strategies that I'm really excited to share with you. So with that, let's get back to our tips. We're finally at my favorite tip number 4, which is cut the chit chat. All right. We don't need Hey, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? It's sunny today, right? Like, we don't need that unless it's hiding underlying tension. So if someone says, how are you? And the other person says, I'm fine. That could work if we know as the reader that the person really isn't fine. That chit chat could work because it's actually not chit chat. It's masking underlying tension. It's people trying to avoid a certain topic. So chit chat or sort of casual talk about nothing works if it's there to hide an underlying tension, if it's there to show what they're not talking about. Otherwise, cut it. It's not useful to the story. Tip number 5 is to read your dialogue aloud. You don't have to do it on your first go. You don't have to do this on your first draft, but at some point in your writing and revising process, you want to read your dialogue aloud to see how it really sounds. A lot of times when we're just reading words on paper, we think it looks like the way people talk, but when we hear it, we realize that it doesn't. So when I'm working on dialogue in any story, I read it aloud actually several times. I have to revise my dialogue more than I do any other part of a book, except maybe the opening. But this is because making dialogue sound like how a person, in this case, a specific character, actually talks takes time. It takes going over it again and again and really listening to how these people are speaking to one another. I find that as I'm doing that, I'm cutting a lot. I'm cutting a lot of wells and ums. You know, one pet peeve of mine whenever I'm watching movies or TV is when people say, look. Look, Diana, that's not how it works. You know, like in real life, most people, I've never heard someone say, look. They only do it in TV shows and movies. So it's that sort of thing. You find that sort of thing sneaks into your writing. And if you read it out loud, you can catch it. So I'm just telling you to expect to have to read it out loud and expect to have to do quite a bit of revision on your dialogue. If you've made it this far, I know you're ready to write your book. And maybe you're in the middle of writing your book. Or maybe you don't know how to find the time. You haven't written a creative word in years. Or you're the opposite. You might have an MFA in creative writing, but it sucked all the fun out of writing for you and now you're stuck. Okay, if any of these apply to you, as a 3-time published novelist and writing coach, I have put together a free training for you on how to write your dream book while holding down a full-time job or whatever it is you do, okay? And in it, I teach you the exact process I use to write my books. All you have to do to get this free training is apply to my program, the Book Incubator. The application is just 2 questions. You can do it in under 5 minutes, and there's no obligation to join the program. You should join the program, but if you're admitted, I'll send you that free training right away, okay? What have you got to lose except years of your life dreaming of writing this book burning inside you without actually writing it? So click below to apply, and you'll get my free training that you can watch right away, and I promise it will be worth your time. It's really good.